do the numbers mean? Have you ever been in a lobby or tavern and seen a hero with gear named like this? Or this? Have you been on a Dungeon Defender Discord and seen postings in auctions or buy and sell that look like this? Well, today we're going to talk about what those numbers actually mean based on what I've experienced and seen. It is possible I'm wrong, and if that's the case, please feel free to correct me in the comments. Now let's talk about numbers. Basically, the numbers represent an item's stat total for a particular stat or combination of stats. Also, if you see a name with the number, that typically represents the player that farmed that item. No name generally means that item was self-farmed. This graphic shows the generally agreed upon values used when naming and describing gear. So working our way through the image, we can see that apprentice pieces are named by adding tower damage, rate, and range, and then multiplying that total by the armor set bonus. Here's an example of what I mean. This pair of chain gloves is a 1632 app piece. We get this total by adding rate, which is 220, damage, which is 318, and range, which is 271. Now this piece has not been upgraded, so we will also add the unused upgrades, which is 357. 220 plus 318 plus 271 plus 357 is 1166. We then multiply 1166 by 1.4 to get 1632. That is what the total of all three stats would be after the piece is fully upgraded and equipped on a hero with other chain pieces. Easy peasy, right? Now, going back to our chart, we take the same approach for the rest of our builders. Hermit numbers, while not typically used, will normally consist of damage, range, and health. Monks and huntresses are pretty easy, and they just used the range stat for their numbers. EV pieces are just tower damage, and summoners are just tower health. Now, DPS gear follows the same approach. DPS AB1 focus gear is damage plus AB1. This is gear that would typically go to DPS apprentices and DPS countesses that are used in group play. DPS AB2 focus gear is damage plus AB2. This is the main DPS gear and is used by monks, EVs, barbarians, huntresses, squires, and solo countesses. This is the default meaning for DPS gear. When someone says they have a 1770 DPS chain chest, it always means it is an AB2 piece. AB1 pieces are always specified as an AB1 piece. DPS damage focus gear is just damage. This is typically gear that has high damage but low AB1 or AB2, and typically this goes to jesters. For me personally, my jesters have their armor named after the AB2 and damage stats. AB1 focused gear is just AB1. This is gear that goes to adept upgraders and tower boost monks. These heroes typically want gear with high AB1 and hero health and cast rate, with a little hero damage sprinkled in for good measure. The last one you may see used is hero health, which would be used for guardian summoners. DPS gear is a bit harder to calculate for unupgraded gear because you have to upgrade resistances to 29 for ultimate and higher gear, which can use up a lot of upgrades depending on what that item's resistance spawns in at. Here is an example of what I mean. This DPS plate helm is a 1272 DPS piece. We get this total by adding hero damage, which is 308, and AB2, which is 323. It will take 79 upgrades to get resistances to 29 for all four, so that leaves us with 277 upgrades. 308 plus 323 plus 277 is 908. We then multiply 908 by 1.4 to get 1272. That is what the total of both stats would be after fully upgrading and equipping on a hero with other plate pieces. Just know that an armor set bonus is determined by its quality. Ultimate and higher gear is 1.4, Supreme is 1.36, and Trans is 1.33. Lastly, if the piece is an accessory, weapon, or pet, you don't have a set bonus to apply. Now some of you may be asking yourselves, why does any of this actually matter? What are these numbers actually used for? In general, these numbers are used as a way of easily identifying a piece of gear's value or strength. These numbers are used in auctions and in buying and selling channels. They are also used for leaderboards ranking who has the strongest gear. But mostly, for me that is, it just makes it faster and easier to identify if an item is an upgrade over what I currently have. Here's an example. This is my initiate. I know that a stat on Ultimate Gear caps at 600, which is 840 with the set bonus. I'm pretty happy with what gear I have, except for the boots, which obviously do not cap. In general, for ult gear, I want it to cap. So when farming gear, I know that I am looking for plate boots that have high range and enough upgrades to cap. So if I saw a piece with 300 plus in the range stat, with decent sides and 300 plus upgrades, I knew I had a piece I was looking for without having to compare. Honestly, it's just easier to tell what you need for a hero when you can easily see the gear number without having to inspect each piece of gear. That's all I got to talk about today. Thanks for watching, and happy farming.